Hey guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. My name's Amanda, and today I want to share with you some of the books that I'm hoping to read in the month of November. All right, so there are a few bookish things that or events that I am planning on participating in November. I have a read-along and 2 readathons that I will be participating in. The first of which is Historathon. Historathon is a historical fiction-based readathon that I host this time around. My co-host is Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library. I will link her channel down below, as well as our announcement video with all of the details about Historathon. The short version of it is that it will be taking place from November 1st to the 10th, and there will be 5 prompts for this iteration of it. Next year, we will return to it being a full month readathon during the month of November of 2022. So keep your ears out for that, ears, eyes, whatever, out for that. And yeah, but this time around we decided to do a short 10-day iteration to just kind of hold us over until next year. And so yeah, I have a bunch of books that I wanted to read for it. I was putting my TBR together and realized that I have way too many books. I'm not going to be able to read all of these in 10 days, so I'm kind of planning on taking November to just read historical fiction. I have done this a couple of different months this year where I just focus on a genre for the month, and November is just going to be historical fiction for me. However, I'm also planning on participating in Nonfiction November, and I have a sci-fi book that I'm reading as part of a read-along as well, so it's not just going to be historical fiction. So let's get into some of the books that I am planning on reading for all of these things. The first books that I want to talk about are my historical fiction books for Historathon. So what I ended up doing, what I'm going to be sharing with you today, is I picked 2 to 3, one of the prompts I picked 4 books for each of the prompts, and I'm going to be picking from those for the 10 days of Historathon, hoping to hit each of the prompts during that week or week and a half. And then for the rest of the month, I'm just going to kind of pick from these books and try to read as much as I can. We'll see what actually gets read by the end of the month. Who knows? But yeah, so the first prompt for Historathon is to read a book to movie adaptation that is historical fiction. And so the 2 books that I have on my TBR for this, the first one is The Boy in the Striped Pajamas by John Boyne. I've seen the movie, have not read the book. I think this is actually considered a middle grade or YA book. But this is about a little boy whose father is a Nazi soldier and he lives outside of Auschwitz. I think it's Auschwitz. It's one of the concentration camps regardless. And one day when he is exploring in the woods, he comes up upon the fence to the concentration camp and sees on the other side of the fence, there is a boy in striped pajamas. And he befriends this boy, and it's just kind of about their friendship. The movie completely gutted me. So we'll see. It is a short book, so I may get around to reading this. The other option that I had for this prompt is The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. I honestly don't really know what this book is about. I haven't read the book. I have not seen the movie, so I'm not really sure, but I know this is a well-beloved book by Sue Monk Kidd, and I believe it has to do with a little white girl who is raised by a Black woman in the 1960s, maybe earlier than that. I really don't know. But this is my other option for the book to movie adaptation prompt. All right. The next prompt for Historathon is to read a book that you feel like you are the last one to read. So you feel like everyone's read this except you. I think that Secret Life of Bees could fit that prompt as well. But I do have 2 other books in addition that would fit this prompt that I will be picking from. The first of which is a chunker, and that is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. I have not read this. This is set in the 1970s and has to do with a family who the father is dealing with PTSD from Vietnam, and I think they moved to Alaska. I know that it's really dark. It's a very heavy book, and so we'll see what kind of mood I'm in. And it's also thick, so we'll see. But I really, really do want to read it, and so this might end up being my pick for that prompt. The other book that I might pick up for this prompt is We Were the Lucky Ones by Georgia Hunter. This has to do with World War II, and I think it says it follows 3 generations of a Jewish family, maybe, during World War II. I honestly don't know. I just know that a ton of people have read this and loved it, and so this is one that I may pick up for that prompt as well. All right, the next prompt. Sorry, I have to lean. I have my books kind of spread horizontal, and so they're all a little bit more than arm's reach away. But the next prompt is to read a book that has to do with transportation of some sort. And so the first book that I have as a maybe for this prompt is a book that was actually sent to me by the author, and that is Spin by Peter Zutlin. This is set, I think it's 1895-ish. And it follows a woman who is basically dared to ride around the world on a bicycle and earn $5,000 along the way. And so I believe this has to do with Jewish heritage as well. I believe the woman was Jewish. And so, yeah, it has to do with that. And so that sounded interesting. Might get around to reading that one. Another one that's a possibility is Flight of Dreams by Ariel Lahan. This has to do with the Hindenburg disaster. And so we'll see. That might get read. And then the other one that I have for this prompt that I am possibly picking up is The Flight Girls by Noelle Salazar. This has to do, I think it's 3 women, because there's 3 women on the cover, who are part of the women's, what is it called? The Women Air Force Service Pilot program during World War II. And so it has to do with airplanes. So those are my options for that prompt. All right, the next prompt is to read a book that has 3 words in the title. So for this, I also have 3 books as a possibility for this prompt, 2 of which I got from our recommendations video that we did. If you were not around for it, I hosted a live recommendations video, and Lindsay and I, as well as 2 of our bookish friends, got on and did a live and gave live recommendations for each of these prompts. So from that video, I got 2 suggestions for this prompt from Gloria, and so the first of which is City of Thieves by David Benioff. This has to do with Leningrad and the siege on Leningrad during World War II, I believe, and she spoke very, very highly of it, so I'm excited to possibly give that one a try. Another one that she raves about is Dear Mrs. Bird by A.J. Pierce. She compared this one to Guernsey, the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. And so she said that it's just very lighthearted and uplifting. It has to do with, what does it say? About an aspiring journalist who becomes a secret advice columnist during World War II in, I think, Great Britain. Yeah, maybe? Yes, set in London. So yeah, so I'm excited to potentially check that one out. And then the last one that I have for this prompt I'm nervous about, and that is Rules of Civility by Amor Towles. I have read A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles and loved it, and I have kind of heard that either you like this one or that one, but not both. And I'm really hoping that I love them both, so we'll see. But this one is set in 1937. That's really all I know. I have no idea what this is about at all, but we'll see. That's another possibility for a book with 3 words in the title. And then the last prompt is to read a middle grade historical fiction. And for this one, I have 4 books. Who's surprised? But 4 completely different books. So the first one that I have is Behind the Bedroom Wall by Laura E. Williams. This is a World War II historical fiction about a girl whose family is hiding Jews. And my daughter has asked me to read this for like 2 years, and I have yet to do it. So this is a potential for that prompt. Another one that I have is Two Roads by Joseph Bruchac. This is about a boy who goes to a Native American boarding school, an Indian boarding school, in 1932. And so very interested in checking that one out. Another one that is about something that I have no idea about at all is Orange for the Sunsets by Tina Athade. I think is how you pronounce the name. This one is set in 1972 in Uganda, and it has to do with Idi Amin. I don't know if I said that right. When he decides to expel Asian Indians from Uganda, and it follows two kids. One is Indian and one is African. And so it has to do with that. And I know nothing about that time period or that history at all. And then the last one that I got that I was a cover buy for me that just looks so good is The Unsung Hero of Birdsong USA by Brenda Woods. And this is set in the Jim Crow South, and it has to do with a white boy who befriends a Black World War II veteran during that time. And so this one just sounded really good as well. So those are all of the books that I have that have made the short list for my Historathon books selections. We'll see what actually gets read and what doesn't, but I'm really excited about all of them, so I'm hoping that a lot of them get read. All right, now moving on to Nonfiction November. Nonfiction November is a month-long readathon that is hosted primarily by a book Olive, but she always has a lot of co-hosts that are involved as well. And they select 4 one-word prompts that they give as just kind of loose prompts that you can kind of interpret however you want. And so I picked a book for each of the 4 one-word prompts that I might read. We'll see. I probably won't get around to all 4 of them, but I'm hoping to at least get to maybe 1 or 2. So yeah, the first one that I have is for the prompt of the word industry. And that is Blood, Bones, and Butter by Gabrielle Hamilton. This is a book that was gifted to me by Kim at Bookmarks and Breadsticks. We buddy read a book earlier in the year that mentioned Gabrielle, and this book was actually mentioned in that book. And so she found this one at a used bookstore or a thrift store or something along those lines and picked it up and sent it to me. And I am very grateful, very interested in this. But this is The Inadvertent Education of a Reluctant Chef. It has to do with the restaurant industry and just Gabrielle's life. And so very interested in picking that one up. For the prompt collection, I'm hoping to read Steeped in Stories by Natalie Perkins. This is one that I recently hauled, and in this one, Natalie Perkins blends personal narrative, accessible literary criticism, and spiritual and moral formation, and delves into novels by Louisa May Alcott, C.S. Lewis, Ellen Montgomery, Frances Hodgson Burnett, and other literary uncles and aunts that illuminate the virtuous, abundant life we still desire. It says, these novels are not perfect, and Perkins honestly assesses their critical frailties and flaws related to culture, race, and power. Yet reading or rereading these books as adults can help us build virtue, unmask our vices, and restore our hope. And so I think this deals with 7 different books. I've only read 1 of the 7 that she talks about. I've read Anne of Green Gables, which is the only one. And I don't have plans to read some of them, and so I don't feel the need to read all of the books that she talks about before I read this. This just sounds brilliant, and so I really want to read it. So this is the book that I had picked for the collection prompt. The next prompt was style, and for that prompt I picked The Coddling of the American Mind by Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt, I think is how you pronounce the last name. I'm not sure. The subtitle says, How Good Intentions and Bad Ideas Are Setting Up a Generation for Failure. I picked this one for style because I think this has to do with like the style of parenting, the style of just our generation and how we address certain things, my generation and the generation below me. I've heard amazing things about this book, like amazing. So I'm really excited to get to this one. And then for the last prompt, the word is treatment. And for this one, I am planning on reading Punching Bag by Rex Ogle. This is the companion or follow-up to his previous memoir, Free Lunch. They are middle grade nonfiction books, and the first one had to do with just his experience growing up in poverty and getting free lunch and kind of the stigma that went with it. This one, I believe, has to do with living in a home where domestic violence is present and kind of his experience with that. And so I thought that that fit the prompt of treatment well, but I'm just really interested in reading this next iteration because I loved Free Lunch. One of the hardest books I've ever read, but it was so important and so good. If you have not read that, go read that one. But this one just came out and I am really, really excited to get to that one. So those are the 4 nonfiction books that I picked out to read for Nonfiction November. Sorry. And then the next book that I want to talk about is the book that I'm planning on reading for the read-along that I'm participating in. And this is a sci-fi book. And so that is Winter by Marissa Meyer. I have been participating in the Lunaralong, which is hosted by Book Cara and A Star Reads. And this month we are at the finale. This is the last book of the series. So in this read along, we have been reading the Lunar Chronicles, which is a YA sci-fi fairy tale retelling series. Each of the books is a retelling of a different fairy tale, and this is the last one. It is a retelling of Snow White, and each of the books builds on each other, and so I can't really tell you a whole lot about this book specifically. But this is one of my favorite series. This is a reread for me, and I've been loving my reread of this. It's such a good series. I love Marissa Meyer's character development throughout the series, and I'm very excited for this finale. It is a long book. I know that. There's a lot in here. I know that as well, and I'm excited to get to be with all of these characters again. And yeah, I will be listening to this one on audiobook because I love the audiobooks of these. They are narrated by Rebecca Soler, who is one of my favorite narrators. And yeah, very excited to finish off my reread of the Lunar Chronicles with this one this month. So yeah, that's it. Those are all the books that I am hopefully maybe reading in November. Like I said, the Historiathon TBR, I was never able to really nail it down, but I have some options, kind of leaving the window open there, and hopefully get some nonfiction books read as well, and then winter. So yeah, that's going to do it for today. As always, if you have read any of these books, let me know your thoughts about them down below. Let me know if you are going to be participating in Historathon or Nonfiction November, what you're planning on reading. And that's going to do it for today. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya.